Okay, today my intention is to read together with the student the pre-scene information. All right. Now, you know that ACCA already said that you're not supposed to use the pre-scene information to predict what is going to come out in the exam, but I will try to see on the basis of the information given here, what kind of what area the examiner could possibly be testing you lah. Okay, but I must say that there will be more information that will be given to you. So with that, there could be other possible area that could be tested. So there could be new information given in the exhibit in the actual exam. That's the undisclosed information. So with that, it's likely that there would be other area that could be examined. So you just be prepared for that. Now I need you to remember your exam time is only 3 hours and 15 minutes now. So you need to be quite well versed with this information. So when you go exam, you don't have time to read through the pre-scene, so you have to focus only on the undisclosed information, and the moment you recall something in the pre-scene, you go straight in. Okay, now they basically give us a content that altogether there are 12 pages of information, but if you take away this first page and second page, there's only left with 10. Okay, now they gave us an intro and they gave us the airline industry. So this is going to be the industry that we're going to focus at. And they gave you the information about this company called Corjetz. Okay. Now I'm going to go zoom in. Now, first of all, they're telling you about the industry that they're in. They say that Corjetz is a low-cost regional airline business. Now, I am sure when you see that, some of you, the mind already say Air Asia, you know, that kind of thing, all right? Now, it was established 20 years ago in Corland, so that's how they get the name Corjetz. Okay, so the place is called Corland, and it's a country located in the continent called Hundria. So that's the continent. Okay, so you know they are all artificial. That's why they won't be using name like Europe or Asia. They won't. Okay, so they will just use Hyundai. Okay, now over the years it has positioned itself as one of the world leading low-cost airline, and is currently the second largest low-cost airline operating in Hundria in terms of the number of passengers. So we know this company is quite visible in the sense like they are the second largest airline in Hundria, okay, in terms of the number of passengers. Now, they operate currently about 1,000 routes destination in over 30 countries, and they are all in this continent. So they are only focusing in one continent called Hundria. Now, the head office is based on this thing called Near City Airport. That's the name of the head office. Located at in the south of Corland, Hundria is politically stable. Now remember, they are talking about the continent, not the country. So that means the whole region is politically stable. It's economically developed in the world. Now, it's important that we must understand the external environment. So you might get questions that will ask you to analyze the external environment. So I will come to that later on. Okay. Now, most of the country in Hundria form a trading bloc which facilitate free trade and free movements of people within. So this is like the European Union, like that, so that people in the European Union bloc, they can travel to each other without the use of passport, and that means traveling is more convenient and flexible, and that also means that the volume of the traveling will actually be higher. Okay, now each of the country in Hundria uses its own currency. So it's not like Europe, that in European Union they actually use euro, right? But here no, they still maintain their own currency. So which means it will definitely give rise to forex exposure in the business that they are doing. Okay, now Colin's currency is actually dollar. Now they just give you as a dollar. Now Corjetz operate a point-to-point service, meaning that it operates its flight directly between destination. Now we normally call this as direct flight. Like if I want to fly to Malaysia from KL to New York, so there's a direct flight. So that's what we call a direct flight. Okay. Now sometimes you don't fly direct. Then what you do is you're going to stop somewhere. Okay, so there's a connecting flight. So which means you could like maybe fly to Qatar, and then from there you will switch to another place. Okay, now this means passengers do not have to travel to or change flights at a hub, which is exactly what I've just said to you lah. Okay, to reach their destination, which help Corjetz to reduce its operating costs. It also keeps costs low through its no-frill approach to flight delivery. Now they're budget airline, right? So the strategy is basically a cost focus. Okay, that means they want to be cheap, so they're using a cost leadership strategy. So their idea is how to bring costs to the lowest, and they charge at a very low price. Okay, now this approach means that in-flight meals are not provided unless paid for separately, and includes the automation of a wide range of its processes. Now they are doing a lot of automation. Like, you know, if you start to think about how you travel, you know, like through AirAsia, you probably can start to get a feel of how this works. Okay, so like in terms of your bookings, the flight documentation, the baggage drop, the flight check-ins, now all that will also suggest to me how IT could be relevant here. Okay, because you know that all these things are going to be more easier when you take advantage of the IT part. Now you can see how automation has become so-called more advanced as a result of the phone apps. So everybody now will install an apps in the phone, and then it's all connected to an app. So instead of you printing an air ticket, you know that tickets can now be available directly through an apps, and you don't need even to print, and everything is controlled through your phone apps. Now we're just thinking along that line. Okay, additionally, it operates a profitable and popular portfolio of routes between over 130 airports across Hundria. Now you can see they operate in over 30 countries, and they have over 130 airports, which basically tells us that one country you could be flying to a couple of destinations. Now I just want to analyze all these facts so that we put it in our mind, that as you attempt the questions when you go for the exam in September, you know all these things might be relevant to you. So we are talking about maybe 4 to 5 airport, or we say destinations per country. It's probably like that. All right, now and you know that's actually quite normal, right? It's just like you can fly to KL, you can fly to Langkawi, Penang, and Johor. You know, that's like 4 different destinations in Malaysia. Okay, so now the information that they share for us is the information on the industry. So this is the airline industries that they work. Now I will like to give you a precaution. I'm sure when you look at airline industry, some of you may even start to think about COVID. You say there was a COVID, it was in 2020, and then how the whole airline industry was affected. Now please remember, we don't bring in real life information. The whole case is artificial, unless the questions like really relate to COVID or pandemic. If not, you don't even touch about pandemic. You get what I mean? Because you're not supposed to mix up. So when you're fictional you stay fictional. You don't fictional and then suddenly bring the real life facts and try to mix up in your case study. You're not supposed to do that. Okay, so let us see how is the airline industry being influenced by all these external factors. So see whether the case study is telling anything like that to us or not. Now, the airline industry encompasses a wide range of businesses called airlines, which offer an air transport service to customers. Now, normally referred to as commercial airline. Okay, so they're telling us there's one type of airline called commercial airline. These businesses offer scheduled commercial flights which carry both human passengers and cargo. Now, in most cases, they're carried out using jet aircraft. And commercial flights are those which transports passengers from one destination to another with a pre-booked ticket. Now, non-commercial flights are either operated privately or by the military. So they now give you a distinction of the industry, commercial airline and non-commercial airline. And what is Corjetz doing? It's quite clear Corjetz is under commercial airline. Okay. Now, the airline industry formed just one sector of the wider aviation industry, which also includes all other aviation related businesses such as jet engine suppliers, aircraft manufacturers, aerospace company. Now you should know that, right? That you don't just have airline. You know, airline has a lot of support industry, so all that are part and parcel of the airline industry. Okay, they say airline industry directly and indirectly support global trade, tourism, economic growth. Therefore, it has major influence on globalization in many other industry. Okay, so just a little bit to tell you about what's the airline industry is all about and what kind of sectors that they are in. Now, then they start telling you the passenger types. So a leisure passenger is someone that traveling on holiday to stay in a hotel or holiday resort to relax or experience local tourist attraction. And the business passenger is someone traveling for work purposes, and they will normally be attending a business meeting or conference. Now, these will all be using commercial airline, right? So they have leisure and business passenger. Okay, so they basically tell us what kind of customers that you're gonna have. Now, both types of passengers may be offered the options to travel first class, business class, economy class by some of the airline. Now, we know this is not the way how budget airline works, because it's only the usual, we call the premium airlines, that they will have a choice of whether you want to go first class, business class, economy class. Now, whereas if you go budget airline, they don't have a class. But of course, nowadays, they do have a few premium seats, you know, like I think AirAsia used to call it flatbed. Okay, now first class passengers pay significantly more for their ticket, but in return receive a high quality service, including dedicated airport lounge. So those are the area that before you go to the aircraft, you spend time in the airport, you can take shower, you can eat your food, you know, that kind of things you can do. You can do your office work, go internet, large and comfortable in-flight seats, and unlimited food and drinks provided throughout the flight. Now, business class passenger pay less than first class for their tickets and receive a slightly lower level of service. Economy class pay even less for the flight ticket than the usual class passenger, and economy class price ticket normally includes a standard seat with a limited leg room and standard and limited in-flight food option. Well, you got to kind of do the math lah, because you see, to give you a first class seat, the space they need is something like 4 to 5 of the space of economy class. That's the reason why naturally a first class seat is more expensive, because if I sell an economy class ticket for $1,000, then the first class seat, if they sell for $5,000, you think and see is actually fair enough, because you're occupying a bigger space to allow that kind of luxury for you. Okay, the airline types by service. They say we have international airline, we have national airline, we have regional airline. So what are all these? Okay, Now, international airlines are the largest and often the most well-known airline. An international airline offers global services, carrying leisure and business passengers and cargo over long distance. International airlines usually have multiple airport hubs, which provide customers access to hundreds of global destinations. Now, remember they mentioned to you about hub for the purpose of connecting to other destination where direct flight is unavailable. And for international airline, because they want to serve more area, it is like, for example, perhaps you are trying to book from Mexico and you want to fly to Kuching. It's a very odd connecting. You don't get a lot of people that want to fly from Mexico to Malaysia that will go to Kuching. So as a result, they probably need to come to certain hubs. So if you book, let's say, for example, Emirates, then you will find that they will have to stop somewhere, okay, in the Middle East to get a hub, and then from there they will transfer. So you might have to do a few times of transfer. I mean, it's quite imaginable, okay. Now, national airlines are those that they focus on offering services within their home country. But they may also offer access to international destination. As a national airline is likely to have a smaller aircraft fleet than the international airline, and often they may offer services to both leisure and business passenger. Regional airline tends to focus on offering services within a specific region, for example, a continent. In some cases, they provide passenger services to locations not offered by either national or international airline. Now, I am looking at the possibility, because we know that Corjetz is definitely regional airline, because the continent that they are operating in is this place called Hundria. Okay. Now, if you ask me, I'm looking at the reason why you're telling me the different types of airline service. What if they might have something to do with, let's say, you know, acquisition, because you need to do expansion. You know, maybe Corjetz is contemplating to expand its service to another continent, and then there could be another airline that is maybe financially troubled and they are open up for acquisition, and then they will ask you to look into an evaluation whether or not that you want to acquire the airline, or the pros and cons of acquiring the airline. I'm guessing, okay? So please don't take anything that I say that as this is going to come up, because I'm just telling you whatever I can think of from all these informations that are given to me. That's the best I can do for you, okay? So I'm just thinking of acquisition. Now, I'm also thinking of the possibility of things like collaboration, like how two airlines can work together. And we know that it's very common in the airline industry. We practice code sharing. So if you say, so I don't really know what's a code sharing. Well, you might want to go and Google up and understand a bit about what's code sharing and how that two airlines can work together to reduce costs and could increase their so-called their service rate, and as well as they could increase their revenue base lah. Okay, so go and look into that. All right. Okay, the airline types, they say the business model, you could be a full service carrier. Now, full service carrier offers a range of pre-flight and onboard services within the price of the ticket. Now, they give you full service because they give you everything, okay, until pre-flight to onboard. Pre-flight means before you go up the aeroplane. Onboard is you're in the aeroplane. All right, so what are the services you're going to get once you're on the plane? Now, this may include like check baggage. You don't buy your baggage weight. They give you free so-called allocation. You can take 30 kilos of your bag. Now, they give you meals. They let you access the lounge. Okay, multiple service class. Now this multiple service class is the one that we say first class, business class, economy class. Now they usually fly national, international, long haul and short haul. Now long haul and short haul is usually what we use to classify according to the duration of the flight. Like if you look at Air Asia, for example, Air Asia is only flying all the things that is within 4 hours. Nothing more than 4 hours. Anything more than 4 hours, they classify as long haul. Actually, it's not too long lah, but they will put it to Air Asia X. So that's how they do the classification. Of course, different airline may classify them differently according to their own definition, according to their own specification, their business model. Now, low-cost carrier. Now, this is the one that they aim to gain competitive advantage over a full service carrier by reducing cost. So it's quite clear that the low cost is trying to like compete against the full service carrier. This is done by several ways, including having smaller fleets, smaller aircraft, offering a limited number of service, fly to smaller, less popular airports, and they were landing on ground where the landing and the ground handling fees are cheaper. Now you see, there are a lot of airports, a lot of places, they have different airports. Even like Malaysia, you should know, right? We have the main KLIA and the KLIA 2. You go Thailand, Bangkok, you can see the same. You go Japan, you see there's a lot of countries are having multiple airports, and they operate in that kind of mindset that some airports are meant for the budget airline. You expect quality of service go down, but landing fees are cheaper so that they can lower the price of the tickets. Now, for customers, flights from low-cost carriers are often significantly cheaper. Services such as in-flight meals and baggage allowances will normally not be included in the price of the ticket, is understood. Instead, where these facilities are available, customers will actually have to pay for them. Now, some low-cost carrier offer both economy and business class. Now you can see that it's quite clear that they're trying to make a distinction that they do offer. Like I've told you just now, like Air Asia X, they do have a flat bed, but they don't call it a first class. They rather would just say this is a slightly better form of like economy. That's why it's called a business class. Okay, so it's very, very different because you still sit together with all the people. They don't differentiate the segment and so on. Okay, then there's another type of service called charter flight. Charter flights actually, they focus on providing passenger services to tourists to a specific destination. Now, in most cases, they don't sell their airline tickets directly, but they will have agreements with the tour operators who then take responsibilities to find passenger for them. So instead of example expansion like becoming a regional carrier airline and then take over another national carrier, what if they are telling you that maybe Corjetz is thinking of acquiring a few of the aircraft to run charter airline, and whether they ask you, is this okay or not? Okay, will there be a clash in their branding? Are they able to integrate? Will the value chain of these two types of services can even fit together? You know, all these are the, to me, is all the possible things that they can ask, because the information is all there. It's just how examiner plug in the stories to connect them into a questions. Now, there's cargo airline, that their main focus is the transportation of cargo or freight. Now, some cargo airlines are subsidiaries or subdivision of the airline, which they offers passenger service. That means they run both. Okay. Now they try to tell you the differences between hub and spoke, point-to-point travel. Now, airlines which operate a hub and spoke model, they fly from one airport into a hub airport, with passenger from connecting from the hub onto a flight to their final destination. You know, like for example, if I want to fly to US, sometimes it's very, now some people, they actually prefer hub and spoke because they find that one whole journey to US is too long to sit in a plane. So they would like to either stop at Dubai or stop at Qatar and then they could walk around, have a short massage, or even go for a half-day trip outside before they come back. Then they take another flight to go to US, any part of the US. So that's where hub and spoke comes in. So there's a hub, that's where like a center point where they will collect passengers from different flight and then rearrange them to another destination. Okay, now airline operates this model because it allows them to offer more flights to passenger, and is designed to optimize their network coverage, so they can fly more, they can sell more choices to passengers. So basically, you want to book to any places you can. Okay, now which means that you have to have a very competent IT system. Make sense? That allows customers to be able to pick suitable flights because of all the connecting. You must be able to sure, like if you want to fly one place, you got to pick a flight, because you got to understand there's always a risk involved. Okay, so I just want to let you understand that there's always a risk in connecting two flights, and most of the time the risk that you have to suffer in the airline is if you miss the flight due to delay. So let's say if there is a delay in one flight, how would that delay affect another flight? And do you have things like policy whether you will wait for that flight to arrive? Because sometimes one of the aircraft is coming from one of the city that there's 5 passengers. So there will be 5 passengers that will be stranded if you take off. So do you want to wait for the 5 passengers, or will you just take off? And when the 5 passengers arrive, you're just going to provide them the accommodation and tell them you have to wait for the next flight because you missed it. So all these are the things that you need to like take into account. And because of all these things, I also want to highlight to your attention that we have travel insurance. Okay, we have travel insurance that we will usually encourage travelers to mitigate their traveling risk. Like what we say, if you miss a flight, if you have hub and spoke, another thing is very commonly they make mistake is their baggage. They will have baggage misplaced. So do take that into account, that maybe the bags will never reach you just because it was taken to a different aircraft and so on. It's very normal. Okay, it's very normal. And if you have bought a travel insurance, all that will cover you. So, and you also see that some airlines, because they see that the insurance business is a good market, is a good money, they also venture into it. That's why AirAsia has their own insurance company to sell you this kind of insurance, and they indirectly want to make you buy the insurance. That's why they always include it for you, and then after that ask you to take it out if you don't want. Okay, now the alternative to this is the point-to-point model. That means you can see they can straight away fly from one destination to another destination, and then from this destination to this destination. It's like they allow you to travel in that manner. Okay, now where airline focus on providing passengers with route from origin to the final destination, so I call this direct flight. Okay, in this model there is no need to connect passenger through a hub, as flight operates directly between cities, and this model has proved popular with airline customers in recent years, and most of the low cost operate this model. So the low cost operate this model. Now, and in that case, we want to look at example, if Corjetz is to evolve, and then when they evolve from a point-to-point model into a hub model, then you have to ask yourself, what are the possible challenges that you could face? Like I just highlighted to you some of those problems that we see. Okay, the key air travel statistics for 20X2, see or not, they don't use even 2022. They just say X2. So you can't draw in things like COVID, because you're not supposed to do that. Okay, so they give you X2, global and Hyundai. So they tell you the number of people transported a year, the average number of flights a day, and the passenger revenue. So actually, if I just do a quick analysis, at the global level, you're talking about 390 billion divided by 3 billion. So it's like they are talking about 130 per passenger lah. That's the revenue that they are able to generate at the global scale. But if I look at Hyundai, right, we are looking at 79.2 divided by 600 million. So 79.2 billion divided by 600 million. So they are also generating about 132 per passenger. So in terms of value generation, I find like there's like really not much of difference. So it's quite identical whether it's in the continent or whether they're globally, they're generating more or less the same amount of revenue per passenger. And if you are looking at the number of flights that they have, 390 billion. So we're talking about 390 billion. That's a very big figure, right? Divide by 73,000. So, wow. 390 billion is, yep, divide by 73. We're talking about they generate about 5.3 million per flights lah. Okay, so that's the amount of flights that you're looking at. All right, or 3 million per flight. And this side we are looking at about 5.28 million per flight also. So actually you can see that they don't differ much lah. So I guess the examiner probably have used more or less the same data set to create the global and the Hyundai continent, the characteristics. Okay, what are the flight management activities? They say that the flight management activities are actually done or provided by the airport, and the airlines will pay for these services through an airport fee. So there is this fee that you have to pay for flight management services. Now, air traffic control, in fact, if you read the news, this is the one that they had problem. I think it was in UK, where the air traffic control in Heathrow Airport was affected, and there was tremendous delay, and many of the flights got stranded and rescheduled. Okay, so there's these big problems that they had just I think yesterday or 2 days back. Okay, now ATC is a vital aspect of air transportation. It is carried out by ground-based personnel specially trained in monitoring air traffic in specific location. Now ATC is responsible for moving aircraft safely and efficiently through the airspace system. The air traffic controller ensures that aircraft remain at set distances apart while moving them between the airport along the set flight path. And aircraft ground handling. Now, ground handling refers to the wide range of services provided to facilitate passengers within an airport and facilitates aircraft ground positioning both before and after the flight. So what are the ground handling service? Like baggage management. This is like sorting passengers' baggage, loading, unloading, making sure that you don't have anything dangerous in the bag like explosive and stuff like that. Okay, customer service management, including gate assignment, pre-flight facilities, operating, shopping in the airport, all that are customer service management. Aircraft boarding management, including shuttle bus services between the airport and aircraft, the RAM, and the passenger travel documentation management. You know that usually because airport is big, sometimes you have to travel from one terminal to another terminal. They may have to arrange buses or aero train, all that kind of services. Aircraft towing and refilling, movement of aircraft to and from a parking stand or from one gate to another, and refueling of aircraft using their fuel purchased by the airline and airport security. Now this is all the pre-flight passenger screening, securities check, bag scanning, passport control, and all the on-site security management carried out to protect the airport building, runway, and machinery. Now that's all about the kind of services associated with the airline. Okay, now then they start telling us about the industry challenge. Now when you tell me about the industry challenge, basically it also means that it will allow us to evaluate the industry. Sometimes the industry that we look at, whether it's attractive or not attractive. Now to me, this is definitely an external or environmental analysis that you might be asked to do. Okay, so in fact I read through some of this information. It could point to a very easy questions, like if they want to ask you about Porter 5 forces, so that you could evaluate like whether or not the airline industry is still good. Now this is exactly like what I say, that if let's say you're going to invest into another airline, you might want to evaluate whether that the industry is still attractive, or whether that country is a good country for us to go in. Okay, whether it could be a Porter's Diamond model or 5 forces model, we do not know. Okay, but I'm just saying that all this information allow all that to take place. Okay, now demand is cyclical, with demand for flights driven by economic growth. In the last 10 years, low-cost carriers have increasingly taken market share from full-service carrier by offering passengers affordable and low-cost air travel. Now this has made air travel more accessible to a much wider customer base globally. So it has also introduced a high level of competition to the industry. So we can see that it's showing us that there are more players. Okay, there are more players. They have more higher degree of intense competition. Okay, now the airline industry has been impacted by several geopolitical events in the recent years, such as terror attacks, cyber attacks, extreme weather events caused by climate change. Now I can be very sure that there's no COVID, there's no pandemic, and I look at all these things. I'm thinking, it's really a easy thing for the examiner to relate to a risk management question, and it could also be possible for the examiner to bring you the IT aspects of the study, especially when they talk about cyber attacks, right? Then you will have to look at what kind of cyber attacks and how that it would affect your business. Okay, now I think terrorism, we understand. Terrorism is where people can hijack a plane and people don't feel safe, and weather problem is the one that can cause, like, a flight got delayed, flight got cancelled. You can even cause physical danger because the aeroplane may not be able to land properly, and then they skidded off the track, they got an accident. And cyber attacks will come in what form? It could be in a form like maybe their personal sensitive information got stolen by scammers. Like for example, you book air tickets, you have to key in your credit card's information, and now your credit card information is being stolen. All that are possible example of how all these attacks will be relevant. Okay, now these have led to both short and long-term consequences for demand. Terror and cyber attacks have impacted customers' confidence in the industry, and climate change is increasingly prominent on the global political agenda. Now because we touch on climate, and because you are talking about airline, you should know that environmental footprint is definitely one of the key issue. Okay, so how do you address the environmental footprint? So you could like bring a questions that to do with environment. Okay, in fact, the next paragraph talks about that. They say the fuel is one of the biggest costs for airline and one of the most volatile. So that's risk management. You are talking about commodity price risk, how that the commodity price could fluctuate, and how do you hedge against this kind of risk. It's something that you have to think about. Now, the fuel costs represent about 20% of most of the airline cost base annually. The price of the jet fuel is strongly correlated with the international price of the crude oil, which has been highly volatile in the last 5 years. The fuel costs are particularly prone to forex movement, which they can have a significant impact on these major costs. So not that they're just tied to the commodity price, they are also tied to forex. So these are all the things that could potentially be the source of your risk. Now, airline industry is some way away from operating aircraft with alternative fuels such as biofuel. That means it's still far from like going to come true, okay? So they are still fully reliant on crude oil. Governments and customers are becoming increasingly environmentally sensitive, and expectation for airlines to operate in a greener way is increasing. So if airline is to survive in the long term, it will need to invest significantly in alternative fuel source. So that's like something that you have to take on, your future direction or the future value. So environmental factors are a major and increasingly significant issue for airline industry, affecting both passengers' demand and operating parameters. So customers are increasingly aware that their carbon footprint from airline travel is about 3% of the global carbon emission. So therefore many are actively considering the alternative to air travel. So because of carbon footprint, some people that they are more environmental friendly are looking at alternative that is more environmental friendly. Okay, now it seems to me that what we can possibly look at will include some SWOT analysis, right, from the case study, that we might be able to look at things like their strength, their challenges, their risks, their threats, because this is actually a threat that the industry is going to face. Now, despite environmental concerns, commercial international air traffic, aircraft operating in the skies have actually increased by 5% in 20X2. According to the latest industry data, the international air traffic control environment is struggling to cope with increasing flight number, and that's evident by the number of delayed flights rising by nearly 20% in 20X2. Now, that's another challenge that is facing the industry. There are more and more delayed flights, and what consequences can that bring to this industry? Similarly, airports around the world are struggling to cope with the demand from airlines for flight slots. This is leading to increased congestions at the airport, resulting in more delays for passengers, and this is also driving up aircraft ground handling service charges for all the airlines. So we saw a narration, descriptions about the airline industry, and now they tell us that how airline industries measure their performance. So these are the KPIs. Right, so they say airline uses multiple performance metrics. They look at available seat kilometers. So ASK is calculated by taking, these are actually real measures. If you go and Google, you can see they are actually used by the airline industry. Okay, so ASK is calculated by taking a number of seats available multiplied by the distance that they're going to fly. And that shows the amount of km that you're able to travel. So they say it measures the airline capacity. Now, the reason why they want to convert this is because different airlines, they may operate different sizes of aircraft. So it's very different. Example, if you say my aircraft can only seat 100 people, but my aircraft can seat 500 people, example. I know they don't have so many, okay? So let's say 100 and 500. So I can fly one time and I can carry 5 times of your load. So I actually have so-called a bigger load factors that I can take into account, right? Now, so then they also look at the revenue per available seat kilometers. So basically it's ASK, but they add the revenue element inside. So they take the dividing the airline's total revenue by the total ASK, then they'll get the revenue per ASK. Now then load factor is the percentage of the check-in passenger in relation to the aircraft seats available. Now this actually measure utilization rate. Okay, and because in the past there are many airlines, if you remember those days in the class, I did share with you about this United Airlines, the problem with overbooking practice. It's because they know that they look at their load factor and they realize that they never reach 100%. So because they never reach 100%, they know that somehow there will be people that won't turn up. People will miss the flight, so they sell more than they have available seat, hoping that if people don't turn up, those that they sell more can take up the empty seats, and then they could increase the airline's revenue. Okay, now revenue passenger kilometers, this is actually calculated as the number of passenger multiplied by the distance that they travel. So it shows the number of km traveled by paying passengers, who are referred to as revenue passenger. Now this is for environment, CO2 per passenger, calculated as the total CO2 produced by the airline divided by the number of passenger. Now punctuality, so they say that the landing on time at the destination. Now they normally say within 15 minutes of the scheduled arrival time. That's called landing on time, okay, or on time arrival. All right, okay, the airline industry has a global trade association, which tells me that you do have important stakeholders to deal with, because these are people that could potentially affect you. You know how airline industry always struggle with problems like people going on strike. I just want to like remind you, okay, that how example like pilots, the ground staff going on strike whenever they are not happy with the deal that the airlines is giving to them, and that's a very real problem that the airline industry will have to look at. Okay, so the whole reason why they have this trade association is to formulate industry policy, support airline activity. It promotes awareness of the benefits which the airline industry brings to the national and global economy. So its role to develop global standards for the air transport industry and provide advice on airline safety. So these are all example of stakeholders lah. Okay, sorry, I better write trade union just to make sure that we make it clear enough. This is just they're talking about association for the airline industry, but you have other stakeholders like trade union. Okay, so we have got all the information concerning that industry. So now they are focusing on this company that you're going to deal with in the exam, called Corjetz. Corjetz was established in Courland 20 years ago by an entrepreneur brothers called Eric and Axel. They both had worked for many years in the airline industry. So these are people that really know the industry. Okay, so they are not like green. Okay, they are really like expert, and they have keen interest in traveling. With money inherited from their parents, they acquired 2 second-hand aircraft, and they started operating flights from near City Airport, 40 miles from Courland's capital in the south of the country, to airports located close to 2 cities in the north of the country. That's how they started. Okay, and you know, if you look at things like that, if you remember cultural web, this is like the story of the company. Okay, so they gave you the hero, how Eric and Axel were there when they started, and how they built their business from 2 aircraft to I don't know how many aircraft now. Okay, now using their knowledge and experience of the airline industry, Eric and Axel spotted a gap in the market in Courland for a more convenient, affordable, low-cost travel. Up to the point, Courland's airline industry was dominated by full-service carrier. So low-cost business model in Airline Industry proved extremely popular with air passengers who like the convenience of Corjetz point-to-point service and significantly cheaper ticket prices than those offered by the existing full-service carrier. So the only reason that they are winning in this competition is they have point-to-point. People like the convenience of direct travel. And number two, they are cheaper. So that's the only reason. It's not that they like your service or what, but they just like the convenience of direct flight and cheaper. So over the years, Corjetz has focused on operating flights to and from airports across Hunria with the highest customers demand. So they always choose, that's their market that's their business strategy. They always choose those that there will be most demand so that they get most customers, and they look for opportunities to extend their network. Cost efficiency has been its overriding strategic focus. This has been delivered through developing, maintaining long-term strategic partnership. Now you can see that's where, collaboration, working together, JV, partnerships come in. And just now I did mention to you about code sharing. And it seems like now it's not only about airline with airline, they have been doing it with aircraft manufacturers, airport, handling operators, maintenance contractors who maintain their aircraft and operating latest and most efficient aircraft. So these are examples of how this company has been able to control costs very well. So this is the low-cost airline market share in Hunria. Hunria is the continent, not the country. Country is called Corland. Hunria is the continent, okay? Now, there are many countries, 30 countries in this continent. So over the last 20 years, the low-cost air travel has continued to be very popular across Hunria, and now there are about 30 low-cost airlines. It's like every country has their own airline. So they give you all the airlines, and in this 30 airlines, Corjetz control 14% of the market share in terms of passenger number, and this Brig Air, it's about 17%. That's why when we first started reading, they did tell us that Corjetz is number 2, correct or not? Earlier we read that Corjetz is number 2 in the continent in terms of the number of passenger. Okay, Eric and Axel both retired from the business 10 years ago, so they are no longer in the business. And since their departure, they remain focused on maintaining and strengthening low-cost strategic position. So in that last 20 years, you can see that the number of destinations that they fly has been increasing, and the passenger volume has also been increasing. Okay, ownership. Now they are listed 9 years ago and 1 year after Eric and Axel retired. Both brothers originally retained 35% share in the business when it was first listed, but then they have sold most of their shareholding. And they no longer play any role in running of the business. So the founder is gone. Okay, so they are really not there to influence the business anymore. Now, currently 80% of their shares are held by large institutions, and about 10% of the shares are held by the employees, and remaining of the shares are actually by small private investors. Now, again, we have been told of the stakeholders. Okay, you've been told of the stakeholders, and now they're telling you about the ownership characteristics of the company. And because they did mention that 80% of the company actually been held by large institutions. If you remember when we studied corporate governance, we did go into the role of institutional investors or shareholder, like how they need to intervene with the company when they feel things are not right, and what are the example of things that they are not right. If you remember, we run through a couple of lists, like if they're not happy with your number of NEDs on the board, if they're not happy with the way you pay the directors, if they're not happy with the strategy. So please, you have time now before the exam. you could, just go and look at it before you go for exam. So that was the whole idea why I want to go through this together with you, so that I thought as we read through, I can pinpoint and you can have that last mile to last lap to prepare. Okay. Magda Fisk is the current CEO and has already been in place for 10 years. She was instrumental in achieving the listing. Okay, the key resources. They say that the routes, okay, or the routes, they has profitable extensive portfolio of routes which operate to and from over 130 airports. We've read this earlier. It's very popular with customers who find the range of destination and frequency are very convenient and attractive. It regularly reviews the route network to exploit the latest demand opportunity. So they are telling us a little bit about the strength. Later I'll try to summarize a bit for you. Okay, the fleet. Corjetz operates a modern fleet of 300 aircraft. Modern fleet. About 75% are owned outright and 25% of them are leased, which is very common form of financing in the airline industry. Corjetz has invested significantly in the latest aircraft, which are more fuel efficient and environmental friendly. So this could be like a way of how you could claim you are better than your competitor, because as long as other people is not as good as you, you could just use them and say, see, you fly with us, it's better to save the environment, because if you fly with them, it's going to be worse. Okay. Now, this has contributed significantly to low-cost strategic position and also positively impacted on reducing the carbon emission, which is one of the main things that they're looking at. Now, Corjett's average aircraft is about 4.5 years old, which is very low compared to the industry standard. Corjetz focuses on leisure passenger rather than business passenger. That's their market focus. Meaning you have to think from the perspective of leisure passenger and not business passenger. For example, business people may be looking at quality of service, but leisure, they don't care. They just want to reach the place. They just want to be cheap. The rest of the things, they don't really care. All right. Now, therefore, the aircraft cabin consists of an economy class seats only. They only do economy class and they do high density. And that gives Corjetz about 150 seats compared to 140 of a similar size aircraft operated by competitors, which means their leg room is very narrow. But again, they say people don't care. Okay. The high density allows them to offer ticket prices per flight, which is more attractive. Now, technology. They apply data analytics. I guess you see this word, you get so excited that, oh, we're talking about big data. Okay. Now, extensively throughout business and consider data as a key business resource. It has always been an early adopter of the latest technology in the airline industry, and they make extensive use of technology throughout their business. Now, they already have a mobile app that allows passengers to book flight, check in, download boarding pass, receive real-time flight status. The app significantly reduces the cost of issuing, distributing, processing physical ticket. Enhanced feature of the mobile app is the integration of live data from the airport information system with the passenger booking and flight detail, allowing a personalized instruction and updates to be sent before their journey. Okay. Now, all these are the interesting things about how technology can do for them. And if you remember that when we talk about digital marketing, we did talk about how the marketing approach is different because of the 6 I's model. I hope you remember all that. And the 6 I's talks about things like individualization, that how a marketing campaign is tailored to you and exclusively for your needs. So it's like the ads is talking to you. Okay. Now all these are like very possible because all their customers is having a mobile apps. So having a mobile apps, which means the way that you would compete is very different. All right. Now, in most airport, Corjetz operate fully automated baggage check-in machine to help to reduce the check-in queues. So they're fully automated check-in. Now all the aircrafts are fitted with electronic touchpad for the crew to replace the laptops and printed navigational charts for the pilot, and this replaces the need for each flight to carry a heavy printed flight logbooks, which help them to reduce the CO2 emission. Now whenever you cut down the weight, you cut down the cost of burning the fuel. If you remember, I think I shared one of those videos before in the class where they talk about all the funny things that the airlines industry ask people to do, including they ask people to go toilet and release themselves before they check into the flight. And they say it helped to reduce the weight of the aeroplane. Okay, like they cut away some of the food, like instead of 3 tomatoes, they give 2 tomatoes, things like that. Okay. Now all the Corjetz aircraft are fitted with big data server to collect and continuous in-flight data about the flight and also the engine performance. So all that allow us to monitor and tweak your performance according to some kind of objective. So all these are so relevant to the part of your study when we relate to technology. Okay. So things like mobile, all the IT stuff like big data, all the new technology and how you could use the technology to enhance your business. I think it's going to be there. Okay, I mean it looks like it's going to be there. Okay. Okay, people, they employ about 11,800 staff, including about 2,000 pilots and 6,500 cabin crew. The remaining staff fulfill a number of roles, including staff operating at airports, head office staff operating in IT, finance, customer service, human resource management. Regular updates are provided to employees on key business issues, which include a regular updated intranet, a monthly meet the board online chat, a weekly staff newsletter, and all Corjetz employees undergo a full induction program and have access to online learning resources as well as a career development opportunities. Employees receive regular and scheduled managerial appraisal of their performance. Now this section of the information, it seems to relate to me about things on human resource management. And if you go back and look at your study, the human resource management of your syllabus deals with things like what? Like talent management. How you would ensure that you will attract the right people and then they stay on with the company and then they work with you. And there's a lot of elements that they brought in over here, which could be like, you know, a point to connect to the additional exhibits that will ask you to come up with some questions like inductions, meeting the board. You know, to me, these are all the things concerning talent management, all right, like possible. Okay, the board structure, they have 6 executive directors and 5 non-executive directors, including the chair. Now technically, if I just look at this structure alone, I think it's not ideal. In fact, I wouldn't say it's wrong, because it depends on the size of the listed company. Because some of those, the smaller listed company, they only need to have minimum 2 independent directors. But if your company is big enough, if you are big listed co, then usually we need to have at least half of the board, excluding the independent chair, to be independent non-executive directors. So which means if you ask me to just comment on their structures, I think they already fail to comply with the code lah, because they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the executive, and then they only have 1, 2, 3, 4 independent. Okay, and they only say non-executive. I don't even know whether it's independent. So technically, if they want to comply, they are still short of 2 more independent director. Okay, and it could be something that could be a source of intervention for institutional investors to voice out their dissatisfaction. Now, they gave us the committees over here. You realize that they only mention that there are 4 committees: audit, nomination, remuneration, and safety. All right. Now, I guess safety committee is to deal with all the, the aircraft safety in traveling. All right. It seems like they're dealing with that. Okay. Now, it's quite obvious to me that risk committee is not present. So if risk committee is not present, then who is actually in charge of the major risks of the airline? The one that we did say just now, like the IT risk. Okay, things like the cybersecurity. I don't think cybersecurity should be part of safety committee. Well, you can, okay, but just that I thought it's a bit strange. Like, what about the price of the fuel? That's definitely not safety committee. And we know that whenever you don't have the risk committee, you should park the role of risk committee into audit. Now, because the case study did not give you the role in detail, I think it's worth for you to read up. It's worth for you to read up so that you just get ready. If they talk about the audit committee, the nomination committee, you know exactly what they need to do. Okay, so please spend some time on that. Now, I know that the ACCA did mention you don't have to do too much extensive research into the actual industry, but if you really think it's okay, you want to spend some time to just go to one of the airline that's listed, look at the annual report, that's good enough. You're going to have some of the actual role that they need to play for all that committee. Okay, now, and when you have only 4 independent directors, it may also suggest to me that a lot of these committees, their membership will have to be focusing on the same 4 people, which can be over dependency on the same people, which is not good. So that's why it looks to me, if they're going to look at that and test you, right, there will be a small part that relates to corporate governance. Okay, Corjetz has a detailed risk register and a robust enterprise risk management framework. So they do have a risk management system. The board takes responsibility for determining the nature and the extent of risk that is willing to take. Now, nature of risk is the type of risk that you want to take. Remember, we studied something called risk appetite before when we talk about risk management. So we talk about risk appetite. And when we say risk appetite, measure the type of risk and the amount of risk. That's 2 things. Okay, so the type of risk is like, example, if you're operating airline and then you do not want to face with some geopolitical risk, then don't fly to a region that is dangerous. For example, if you know that there's civil war going on, you might not want to go because you don't want to take the risk. Now, that's nature. Now, extent is basically the amount of risk, okay, that are you a risk taker or you're not a risk taker. So all that is nature and extent. Now, it is also responsible for maintaining and monitoring the systems of internal control and risk management. Risk management activities are coordinated by the risk and assurance team, led by a risk manager. So they do have a risk manager who reports to both the CEO and the chairman of the audit committee, which explains to me why the risk committee is not present. So imagine they may ask a question, do you see advantage to separate the risk, the audit com and risk com? I thought that's like a perfect match, right? Because the question don't even have a risk committee. So they will just ask you, talk about what are the advantages of separating. Now, the one, we had past year on that. Okay, so we have seen a past year question that's tested that before. So if you really like, what do I do? Please go and dig your past year and just go and scan through the answer. Okay, that will at least help you prepare a bit. So I hope I give you some point of consideration. So the key risks will include safety and securities of customers and staff, delivering safe and secure operation, which meets the need and expectation of customers and staff, is critical. The growing impact of climate change and increasing expectation of customers, governments, regulators, and wider society for a greater focus on the environmental and sustainable activities. Now again, it seems like you're pointing to me about stakeholders management. How that you need to deal with all these expectations. And obviously, you know that Mandilo, it's one of the main model that we use to evaluate the influence of its stakeholder. Macro and geopolitical events like general economic trends, forex, volatile fuel prices impact financial performance, availability, securities, and performance of your website. Your website. And critical business operating system. And you need to know that because more and more people, they like to book directly themselves. They don't use travel agents like those days. So the websites is critically important, and again that will draw us back to what we discussed just now when it comes to the part on IT and digital marketing. All right, remember how you could stand better against the rest of your competitors. Okay, so they gave you their website, just an extract. What do? We deliver low fares to customers and operate flights to places our customers most want to travel using our cost advantage and the leading position at the airports. So they have a big network. Okay, the mission statement is to connect people, and they made it very clear it's only in the continent through affordable and sustainable. So the questions of sustainability has to be further defined. And what do you mean by sustainable travel? So how do you ensure that it's a sustainable travel? So example, how do you take care of the environment? Maybe you do carbon offset. That means you know that you create a lot of carbon footprint, but at the same time, you're going to invest in things that can offset the carbon that you create. So which is very common, okay? That's why companies, they go and buy carbon credit. You realize that? I just want to highlight a point that you could buy carbon credit. So example, like there are companies that they do solar or renewable energy. Then they have a lot of carbon credit. So they go and sell the credit to whichever companies that needed the credit so that they could offset the carbon footprint that they have. So these are example of things that you can do. Okay. They gave you the values of their company. They talk about sustainable behavior. So what is sustainable to them? Emission, efficient, and waste management. So they are looking into all that. Okay. Now and obviously you can see how even in food packaging, what kind of food packaging you're going to use is going to affect the kind of waste that you're going to create. Now, committed to safety, including the staff, customers, and emergency preparedness. Putting people first, they engage employees, fair reward, provide development opportunities. So these are it seems to me, these are all the HR things. They drive innovation, they invest in latest technology, they innovate to improve customers' experience and affordability, and then they build customers' trust. So customer satisfaction, data protection, and prevention of bribery and corruption. So there's all the small little things that seems they can branch out from here and test you in the exam. Okay, then the final bit is they give you their financial highlights. Now, I really don't think the highlights, it's very useful because you can't really read accurately like how much is this? It's about 5.5 over billion, but I don't know what 5.2 or 5.3, we can't read, right? But we can see for sure that they are seeing increasing revenue, and they are also seeing increasing profit before tax. So this is an airline that their financial performance is getting better. Okay, but in terms of ROCs is like fluctuating. Okay, so but they're still improving of late. But in terms of punctuality, even though they are not as good as those days, then they improve a lot, but then they start to see that their punctuality has started to drop. So it shows to me there's some struggle. There's some struggle. But again, what is the cause of the struggle, and is punctuality a main issue? I don't really think so, because the customer satisfaction is very high, up to 78%, as opposed to all the 5 years is the best. So people are basically happy with them. Okay, now then they give you the cost breakdown. So what are the main costs that the company is dealing with? Okay, so you can see most of the costs is to do with the flights, the fuel, okay, the airport, the crew, air traffic, and maintenance of aircraft, even the depreciation. So it's mainly all the cost is tied with the aeroplane. It's not so much on marketing, and the rest of it is just a small fraction of it. Okay, now that's all the informations that we have been given. All right, okay, I thought that we could, I'm just trying to give you some idea. Now, when we read about Corjetz, right, we get some information on their background. Okay, so it was founded 20 years ago by two owners. So Eric and Axel. All right, that's the two owners, and they started with 2 aircraft, and that's how they grow, and they became listed today. All right, so their main focus is now they are the top 2 in the Hundria continent, and they are listed with 80% owned by institutional investors. So that's a little bit of their background. Now, in terms of the market position that we see, they are actually a leader in low cost carrier. Okay, they take a big chunk of the market share. You can actually work out what is the market share yourself. Just have a look. All right, and you can see that this is their business model, that they have stayed the same even though the owners had retired, because they did say that even though the owners are not there, they are still going on with the same strategy, and their focus is on leisure passenger, not business passenger. Okay, so that's the market that they are in. Now we can see that the key resources that they did mention to me is how they could have many routes, 130 routes that they travel, which is one of their advantage that bring a high satisfaction to customer. Remember, there are 2 things that customers are very happy with you. They like the direct flight, and they also like the cheap tickets. So that's the 2 things that they're very happy with you. Now they have a very modern fleets. Okay, modern fleets, young fleets. They are very new, 4.5 years old, which is compared to industry standard, this is so much younger, and that also means that their cost is more efficient in terms of their fuel consumption is also more efficient, and they ride a lot on technology. So they have been telling you about having a mobile apps. They have been telling you about automation that they've been using in all the pre-flights and all the on flights. Then they have been telling you about data analytics, to the extent that they can even analyze the engine. Okay, to the extent on the aircraft engines, they could analyze whether, like whether the pilot is flying at the right speed, so that they're burning the right amount of fuel. Okay, and they focus a lot on people. They focus on their staff. I remember their HR policy sounded nice and pleasant, like they really take care of the people. Okay, now then in terms of their governance structure, we can see that they have they don't have majority independent director. If I'm not wrong, the ID got 5, the ED got 6. I included the chairman. Then we read about how they have no risk committee, and we also have no detail about their role. So a lot of things that they did not mention to us. They did give us a fair bit of information about their risk and risk management. In fact, there are a lot of risk issues are being distributed throughout the case. So as you read the case, there's a lot of information that they mention to you. Now, they give you some of the threats or the challenges that the industry is facing. The threats and the challenges, which include, if we look at it, we saw they keep mention things like environment. Okay, so environmental sustainability seems to be one of the major issues that we're looking at. Now, they also tell us about forex risk and also commodity price, because of the price of the fuel is fluctuating, and that affects profitability. And you saw in the last page the percentage of cost that allows you to do an analysis of how much will that actually affects your profitability. They did mention about increasing level of competition. They also talk about a crowded airspace and airport, and that has caused a lot of delay, and how you could overcome the problem of delay. Okay, you could overcome the problem of delay, and how could that be an advantage for you? Like example, because you have an apps, and the apps could give real-time information, and imagine passengers can be informed about your flight will be delayed, you'd have to come to the airport so early, you know, all that kind of thing is going to make a lot of difference lah. Okay, then we also see that there's this aircraft that might require replacing, or will you keep the same old aircraft? Because even though right now you take pride in your 4.5-year air fleet, but do understand that you go by the year, and every year your aircraft is getting older and older, and when your aircraft is getting older and older, it's obviously not an advantage anymore to you. So you do have to recognize that, and what is your policy. Okay, so I think this is a little bit about them. Okay, let's just go down here. Now I see that there's a lot of space for external environmental analysis okay, and I really can't pinpoint to what extent that they could ask you, but I thought some of the things that I would just want to summarize it for you include the strength of this company. Now you can see that how they started with two, I could call them veteran, because they are people that involve in airline. They are not people that know nothing about the airline industry. They know the airline industry, and then they have been able to keep a cost leadership model, and the entire business practices is based on how they want to keep costs low. Remember, they talk about having strategic partnership so that they could maintain their costs at a very low. I think that's a strength that they're having. Now, very extensive network is another things that why customers are very happy with you, because of a lot of the locations that you can fly. Your modern fleet of aircraft is your present advantage, but whether how long you can keep this, I really don't know, because you have to understand that if you're going to keep on with this, then you become a pressure to change your aeroplane every now and then. Okay, your seating capacity shows that you attract leisure passenger. Remember, they say instead of 140 become 150. and you can make the price of the air ticket become cheaper, but at the same time it will turn away your business passenger. But it's not necessarily a problem, it's just the focus of the business now and your technology adoption. So I think you have to highlight that they are very good in their IT. So I think the IT part is going to be one of the main aspects of the question, and how they seems to focus on employees in terms of their stakeholder, because they mentioned about how they communicate with their staff, how they will have board of directors to have an online chat with them. They're not small, you know. They mentioned about 11 over 1,000 of workers just now. Where is it? Yeah, they have about 12,000, you know. That's like a lot of people, you know. So, and they still take the efforts to do that. So it shows that they really value their staff. Okay, now the challenges and risks that I guess you have to really look at in terms of definitely safety and security. They already identified terrorism, cyber attacks, and the other one is environmental issue. Okay, I think these are the three things that they already highlighted to you because of the climate change just now. That's the one I remembered. Okay, so that is going to be a key thing. And the economic volatility seems to be something that could affect you because of prices, forex. Now that's something that could be a challenge to you, although Hyundai is said to be stable. I do not know if you're going to consider a different place that you might want to go in. Now there's an intense competition coming up. Okay, so that intensity of the competition is going to be a major problems that you're going to face. All right, okay, so these are how I thought I just want to go through very quickly with you. Okay, I just want to rush it through. Now you can see, just read it and go through with you and put in a little bit of thoughts. We take about 1.5 hours. Now I would like to really like suggest to you, as I go through some of the things, if I pinpoint some of those issues that you might feel like I've forgotten. You know, it's before exam. You can do wonders before exam. If you don't regret after exam, you know, so you can use whatever time and start digging for information. Do it now. Okay, then I would recommend students to read up again. You might want to come up with a summary, you know, like what I'm just doing with you. Okay, you can come up with another summary that's more relevant to your own, you know, familiar to your own memory, to remember how you want to classify things. Because when you go for exam, you can't bring any notes with you. So you might want to like write up a summary, so as you read through every day, then when you go exam, you really like know this is a company that's in your mind. So when you start reading the rest of the exhibit, you know, you don't really need to like I don't have to think about, oh, they only have 11 directors. I don't need to think. I don't have to think about, oh, they're focusing on low cost. I don't need to think about that. I don't have to worry about knowing that they are very into IT, because all that is like in your mind. Okay, so we do not know how things is going to be. This is our first exam. I'm equally excited like you guys. I hope you're excited. Okay, so I hope this help you to sit for your exam. All right, okay, so I'm basically done. All right, there's no question, so we're not going to discuss anything. I just want to share with you the time to read through the questions together. Okay, so I'm done. Thank you very much, guys. Right, so thank you so much. I hope that it really helped you guys to prepare for the exam.